There's one brand of car that's notably absent from my garage, and a test drive today might be the trigger to change that. I'm incredibly lucky to own cars from the likes of Ferrari, Ford, Mercedes and McLaren, even the Zenvo. But currently there's nothing from Lamborghini in my collection, and maybe that needs to be fixed. I've previously owned a Huracan STO. It was brash, bonkers, and everything you think of in a Lambo. But after 2 years, I felt it was time to move it on. However, since then, every day I'm staring at my friend's Murcielago SV that's been residing here at the Shmeemobiles, and it's got me thinking. There's one model that's always stood out to me, the Gallardo, and today my friend has kindly dropped off his 2006 pre-LP Spyder to take out for a test drive. Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello and welcome back to the channel. Is this going to be the one that brings a Lamborghini back to the Shmeemobiles? Let's find out. Later on, we're going to take a look through the classifieds and find out what it might cost for something like this and whether that would be a good idea. I want to talk as well about why I have a soft spot for the Gallardo, but let's start with a bit of a backstory. I used to own an Audi R8 Spyder. The relevance of my old R8, one of the earliest Shmeemobiles, is that it was the sister car to these. At the time, Lamborghini, owned by Audi, of course part of the bigger Volkswagen Group umbrella, and that was a car that I used for tons of different events, loads of rallies. It was a big part of the early days of the Shmeemobiles on this channel. This car, however, was introduced as the baby Lambo, the V10 supercar, the car that really started what became the Huracan, what's become now Temerario as well, but a new chapter for Lamborghini, sitting beneath the bigger V12 siblings, the likes of Miura, Countach, Diablo, Murcielago, and then Aventador, and now Revuelto as well. This is a 2006 car, which is called a pre-LP. The facelift that came shortly after were the LP cars, the LP560, LP570, and the other models that came after. It originally launched back in 2003, powered by a 500 horsepower, 5-litre, naturally aspirated V10, available with a manual gearbox or with the E-gear, the automated manual. Now, my R8 was a V10 Spyder with the R-Tronic, as Audi called it, their equivalent of Lamborghini's E-gear. In fact, when you open up the back of the car, there's even Lamborghini logos that you find underneath it because of the parts that were supplied for that car. But that was based on the 5.2. This being the 5-litre is even rawer, for reasons we'll find out when we're driving it. And I've had a soft spot for these. It wasn't all that long ago that I met up with Tyler, Wildcat, out in Tennessee in the United States, and we went for a drive in his Gallardo, in fact. But this is now here on roads that are going to be more familiar to me to go and drive and to find out more about. So let me show you a few more things about it, and I want to get this out on the road, and then I want to find out whether one of these might be within budget to add to the collection. I'm about to start this up, and it may have a not so standard exhaust on the Go Slow Gallardo, of course named after a Spanish fighting bull, but there's a lot I need to explain. Why a Gallardo in a world with some incredible Lamborghinis? What is it about this car that grabs my attention so much, and what differentiates the pre-LP to the later cars as well? So one of the biggest giveaways of these early Gallardos are the taillights, the way they wrap around over the top onto the rear deck. The later cars cut off just above and have an updated style. The lines in general, the way that you have the straighter lines across the bodywork and particularly around at the front, the lower front splitter, are all very representative of those earlier cars, similarly to the Murcielagos, with more shapes to them on the later models, along with new headlights and other details as well. The interior of this, against the Blu Caelum exterior paintwork, blue sky in Italian, is in this navy blue over the dark grey leather, and I tell you what, that is very early 2000s. This is all very familiar to me as well, the styling of it. But let's step in here because I want to start up the V10, the 5-litre naturally aspirated, even firing 10-cylinder engine that we have behind us. Mid-engine, of course. So key goes in over on this side. Give that a turn. We've got about 24,000 miles in here. Turn on the ignition. Get ready for this. In fact, to stop the beeping, because Lambo of this era. Start it up. Yes, this sounds so good. We'll need to go warm it up to hear more of that and talk more about it in just a moment. Listen, I know what you're thinking. Why, of all of the great Lamborghini models, is it a Gallardo that we're talking about today? And I tell you what, that's a big part of it. That V10 engine sound, but with a portfolio of different models like that of Lamborghini, right? Diablos, Murcielagos, even Aventadors, when we're talking modern classics. There's something about this car which I want to kind of unravel and understand a little bit of. At the moment I'm actually just in the regular normal mode. There is a sport button, so let's press that, sharpens everything up just a little bit. The other bizarre thing, I tell you what, for driving a car which is literally painted in a colour called blue sky, somehow, miraculously, we're in the United Kingdom and the sky is basically blue. There's not much that beats the roof down, that kind of engine note, and nice twisty roads to go and drive. So listen, let's talk modern classics, right? A lot of the cars I've acquired recently have been of that ilk from my younger years, the 1M, the Clio V6, even my V8 Vantage Roadster, buying that back, because those are the cars when you're a late teenager, early 20s, that really get you into cars in general, as a topic, full stop. Those are the cars that you have your first, I guess, moments dreaming of driving. And for me, when the Gallardo came out, I was 16 at the time, and that was kind of the idea of, wait a second, there's a Lamborghini that could basically be your more usable daily supercar? What on earth? How does that exist? I mean, this is a four-wheel drive car that in its earlier guise, as I said, had 500 horsepower. Of course, originally coupe only, with a little bit more practicality than the Spyder has. I'm not gonna lie, there's not a load of headroom when the roof is up, and there's not a load of luggage space in the front. And of course they can be slightly fussy cars as well. But with whatever the guys have done to the exhaust system on this, the sound of it is truly insane. I'm not gonna lie. Oh, we've actually got some horses up ahead, so let's go up some gears. And that demonstrates another side of it, right? It can be really quiet and calm. I actually feel a little bit anxious in such a loud car going past some riders on horses here, but I think we're okay. I think we're doing it quite nicely. Gently does it. I feel so bad. I don't want to just start downshifting as we go through here. Anyway, like I said, it's that era for me, and yes, that's Murcielago as well. But I always loved the idea of having a supercar you can actually use. I mean, look at what I do with my collection. All of the cars get frequently driven, get regular runouts, and that was even nearly 20 years ago, Tim. The same thinking, the same idea in my mind, the idea of, wait, Lambo have finally made a car that you could actually potentially live with? And of course, like everyone, at the time it was that, or an F430, and then fast forward and the R8 came along. And I love the R8s from day one. I've also spoken about that as the same kind of car for me, especially having owned the V10 Spyder that I had. But there's always been this, well, firstly, desire to return a V10 to the Shmeemobiles. Secondly, desire to return a Lamborghini to the Shmeemobiles. And thirdly, desire to link back to my own R8 that I used to have. So you can start to see how 2 + 2 is beginning to equal 4 with this little calculation. We've not even spoken about the car and what it's actually like yet. But as an idea, it's been brewing in the back of my mind. And then I drove Tyler's, which was gated manual, totally epic in every way. I had an amazing time in that. And I just keep finding myself looking through the adverts, through the classifieds, through the auctions, collecting cars and the like, after of course buying my Abarth 500 Ferrari Dealer Edition on there. And I want to touch more on the pricing, because that's also kind of a relevant thing when it comes to collecting cars that, well, collecting cars myself that are perhaps not going to be driven all that often. I find it hard to justify massive spend on a car if I'm not going to go out and drive it a lot. So a part of it is owning the car, enjoying owning the car and understanding the experience of the car. Another part of it is actually using it. So if it's more the former than the latter, you need to look very carefully at what that thing's actually going to cost. Where does it land? Does it make sense? Oh, nice RS6, fully stealthed out, that just cruised past us. Now, we're in sport mode. I'm in second gear right now. We can take first gear, just because why not? Higher in the RPMs. This is awesome, and I tell you what, I love the automated manual gearboxes. I'm very familiar with them. Cars like the LFA 177, all the E-gear Lambos, the R-Tronic R8. You have to fluctuate the throttle pedal, give it a little lift. That downshift nowhere nearly as fast as the modern supercars. But miles per mile factor, this thing is verging on going off the charts. Absolutely awesome. I have got to step out for a moment because this is such a blast from the past, a throwback, the perfect day to be driving this car. I mean, at this time of year here in the UK, we don't often get days with the sun out like this. It is absolutely perfect. But I know what you're thinking, how can I get so excited about driving one of these against all of the other cars? And it's that time it launched, right? For me, back then, playing with it in games, dreaming of one day, maybe owning something like this, and the bang for buck is off the charts. We'll talk more about that a little bit later on. But what you get for your money with one of these things, it's only a little bit more than buying a new electric hatchback, for example. And yet you can have a V10, a Lambo, even if it's the entry baby model from the lineup. I mean, look at it in this weather, absolutely immense. This is so cool. Let's get back on the road because we've still got a tunnel awaiting us ahead. I'm being absolutely blinded by the low sunshine, but I'm not complaining because it is pretty perfect right now. So let's have a little overview of this car, my friend's car. He actually bought a car from me in the past as well. This is a car that he drives a couple of times a week, keeps it running. I think you could call it a driver, and that's the type of car I like as well. The kind of car where you don't need to worry about keeping it absolutely pristine, 0 mileage. You can go out and have some fun. This car's done some mileage. I think it's fair to say that there are a few things that aren't absolutely perfect. For example, some paint issues, some leather issues, stuff like that. But that means you can actually enjoy the thing. And through the trees here, building up those revs towards the red line, it is amazing fun. I tell you what though, one of the things, even at this level of power, is it's a little bit too much for the laws of the road, you know, those all-important things that we kind of have to adhere to if you don't want to find yourself without a driving license, which, if you enjoy driving, I think, yeah, bit of a self-explanatory one. I tell you what, just going down here, every downshift, every sound out of it, the character is insane. Now this particular car, as I said, it's had a few modifications. It's actually got a stage 1 tune, so it's running about 555 horsepower, up from the standard 520 that it would have had by the time that this arrived. It's also got some aftermarket suspension, so I can't tell you exactly what that is, but slightly different feel to the standard car. And of course the bespoke exhaust system, which does this. It's just silly. It's not the fastest thing in the world, but it's plenty quick, mark my words, when it comes to driving somewhere like this, you know, national speed limit roads here in the United Kingdom. It rides well. I find the steering a little bit at the heavier end. You know, you could get some rear-wheel drive derivatives. They made the Balboni, the LB550. There have been a couple of rear-wheel drive variants of the Huracan as well, but one of the things that's so complicated with Gallardos is that it must have been the model that's ever existed with the most special editions, perhaps vying for that accolade with the Bugatti Veyron. There were so many different variants of this, so many different special, one-off, limited runs, that it's basically impossible to know all of them. If you do know every single one, you are very, very, very well versed on the Lamborghini Gallardo. But driving through these types of roads, like I say, it just feels right at home. And we haven't even got to the most exciting bit of this, the most exciting, noisiest bit of actually driving this car. The dual carriageway, the road opens up. A lot of fun at about 70 miles an hour into the evening sunshine. It's very bright up ahead, but we're heading to the tunnel. He's on it. We're not on the Autobahn. No comment. Up ahead of me, I spot a 901 GT3, but I don't know if we'll catch him in time. I'm actually going to slow down because the best thing with a tunnel is to just ease it back a touch, I just slow it down. What on earth? Wait for the downshift. This is madness. This is the most insane sound. Last one. Are you crazy? That is ridiculous. It's like driving through with Sam, seen through glasses 360, the Challenge Stradale. Same kind of aching cheeks from smiling, given just quite how amazing that actually is. One thing I'll mention, because I know this problem from my Audi R8, airbag light on the dashboard, which is to do with changing the ECU, remapping the ECU, which is behind the seat, and you have to unplug the seat, and you can only turn that off at the dealer. So if you've unplugged your seat, I did this once in the R8, you need the special Lamborghini tool for that specific thing. Yeah. That was fun, I'm not gonna lie. The kind of funny thing about this is that before returning back, someone gave me one of those, which is quite funny. The upset value per pound of this is off the charts. We'll talk more about that in a second. What's interesting though for me is, having obviously done a lot of miles in my R8 back at the time, how familiar this is. The feel, and don't get me wrong, it's super flexy. It's not like driving a modern car or a carbon tubbed Spyder like the LT, but the whole familiarity of the way it shifts, the way it sounds, the way it feels, even if the R8 had the updated engine and lots of software updates for the gearbox, I'm sure. Even the, I'm going to say, outdated stuff inside, the displays on the dashboard, the controls, the infotainment, it's super old school relative to anything modern. But that's not really the point. What I would like to find out though, as I said, how does this actually compare? Because I think you're going to be quite interested to think about this relative to some other cars out there. Let's go take a look. I have prepared two things here. Firstly, some of the adverts on Auto Trader, one of the biggest websites for this kind of thing in the UK, mixture of private and dealers. Then also on Collecting Cars, where I bought my Abarth recently, some of the auction results for Gallardos that have sold on the platform. So starting with Auto Trader, these are of course from the most expensive. So we've got some of the six-figure examples, the LP570s, Edizioni Tecnicas, earlier Superleggeras, the Performantes. A lot of people forget that the Performante was the Spyder version of the Superleggera. It didn't arrive with the Huracan. But I think it'd be more relevant to look from low to high. So let's click the button. And they begin under £60,000 for some of the less expensive examples. In fact, look at these two. We've got an orange Spyder and a yellow Spyder, mid-60s, with similar mileage. Of course, you don't know the condition of these cars until you've inspected them or checked the clutch or been to see them yourself, of course, those kinds of things. Respect to this person, check that out, nearly 80,000 miles, and that car actually has the facelift LP560 style front bumper, but on an earlier 5.0, so a pre-LP car. Lots of different examples there. I guess we have to go a little bit further before you get to the LP560s as well, which look like they begin around £80,000 asking price on the current market. Then if we look at Collecting Cars, and again, you don't know the condition of the different cars, but check this out. In the middle here, look at that car. 2006 Spyder manual, sold for £55,150 hammer price. Of course, some of the LP570s or the LP550 Singapore edition here sold for £100,000. These are UK cars, only the cars that have sold in the UK. And obviously going back, that's about 4 years now. Those prices not so relevant because these things kind of move. So what we've established here, oh, look at that. 2003 Coupe manual, just over £43,000. Gallardo Nera, £44,000. Lots of special editions. This is actually really interesting. That coupe there as well, that ended recently, £55,000 manual SE. So you can kind of get the point. This is, to put it in some perspective here, that car, in fact, £43,000, is only about £1,000 more than the electric Abarth new list price that I actually had recently as a runabout. It's also less than half the price of the Stelvio Quadrifoglio we currently have. The smiles per mile factor, and probably you would want to spend a little bit more, maybe 55, 60, 65 for one that's a slightly better condition, is actually off the charts. That's fascinating. How much car you get for how little money. Coming back to the car, there is one thing I should probably add that I didn't really mention when it comes to comparing where this sits up against other cars, and that's that if you buy one of these, it's still going to have the maintenance costs of a Lamborghini supercar, right? So annual servicing, parts when they invariably break, because at the end of the day it is a 20-year-old Italian, fairly hand-built supercar, so you can probably expect that there are going to be some problems, but I think this has probably hit the bottom of the market for where it's ever going to go. Could you imagine something like this ever being 20,000, 30,000? It's not going to happen. It's a Lamborghini mid-engined V10 supercar. In fact, this very much would have, I guess, been a little bit on the agenda up against the 2009 V8 Vantage Roadster back when I bought this. This was significantly more, though, in terms of insurance and other costs, which at that age was certainly a pretty big deal and very relevant. But I tell you what, today for me, this felt like reliving the Audi R8. It felt like going back to something so familiar, but yet quite different as well, and it fits that modern classic brief. We all have cars that we had on our posters, we played in games, whatever age group you might be, older than me, younger than me, there'll be something that you were drawn to, and for me, this is right up there. I absolutely love them. I'm more drawn to this than I am to the Murcielagos, I think. That sounds really strange, but I think it fits me. So I want to say a huge thank you to my friend who's let me have a drive in this today, who sent the car over to play around with it. If you'd like to see more like that, do check out this video for something else equally cool on the channel. That's it for now though. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers.